Okay, so we all know life can be tough, and a lot depends on luck. It starts with the roll of the dice, where, when you're born, and in particular, who you're born to. So imagine being born into a beggar family, being born to a blind beggar father and a mentally challenged mother. Or, John, I know you're a stickler for PC terms, so more of a visually impaired father and a mother living with a mental illness. So imagine that, and you're going to spend your childhood begging, or again, to use a more current term, as a mendicant, something I just learned today. So we're going to be telling you a very interesting story today about a beggar boy who became a national hero.
And that phrase, Beggar Boy, comes from the name of a best-selling memoir written by the man himself.
The Taiwan History Podcast, Formosa Files, is made possible through the generous sponsorship of the Frank C. Chen Foundation. Formosa Files.
Okay, so quickly before we get into the story, a big thank you to everyone who has answered our calls to action. And wow, hundreds of new people have joined our Instagram page and Facebook and stuff, and this is great. So thank you very much. Keep telling your friends, and 谢谢.
And special thanks to Laszlo Montgomery, podcasting legend Laszlo Montgomery from the China History Podcast. He recently had an interview with Scott Crawford, and one of the subjects was Formosa Files. So very kind words he said.
Yeah, not the first time. He's been very nice to Formosa Files. And if you want to hear a podcast about Chinese history, there's no better one than the China History Podcast, so you can look that up. All right, moving on to today's story. Lai Dongjin was born in 1959 in Wuzhi Township, Taichung County. Now it's a part of Taichung City. Wuzhi is where the high-speed rail station currently is located. And of course, Taichung City is in central Taiwan. Both of his parental grandparents were tenant farmers. Tenant farming was once pretty common, basically a form of like farm laboring. You lease land from a landlord and pay rent in the form of a share of a harvest. John, back in the Middle Ages, wasn't that called feudalism?
Serfdom.
Serfdom. Yeah, wow.
Feudalism. Yes. Okay. Let's take a look at Lai Dongjin's father. So when the father was 4, his own father died of illness, leaving the poor family even poorer.
Lai's father became progressively blind in his teen years. He's not able to afford treatment. This is, of course, decades before Taiwan's excellent universal healthcare system.
By 22, the father has lost sight, completely blind. And he started a wandering life as a fortune teller and masseur to support himself.
Yeah, you might have noticed that even at like various Carrefours or other supermarkets, you'll see people doing massages and they're blind. It's still a thing today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can see that at the Taipei train station. Very professionally run, I must say.
And also fortune telling. You still see that. People who are visually impaired doing that. That can be quite lucrative. Lai's father didn't make enough money either massaging or fortune telling, so he mostly begged at markets and night markets, but he did provide at least a bit of music with a yueqing. The yueqing is a traditional Chinese lute. Yueqing is also called a moon guitar because of its round shape. It's a traditional Chinese string instrument. It has a short fretted neck and usually 4 strings.
About a decade later, after the father hit the road begging, at the age of 32, he met his future wife.
Okay, as a blind beggar, not to be cruel, but you're not exactly at the top of the marriage market. So, hey, that's no small achievement.
Yeah, and young women are suckers for guys with guitars. In this case, a moon guitar. Yeah, sorry. Girls swooning over guys with guitars. It's a irritation. It's a irrational hatred I have for musicians.
Hey, I play the guitar. And in my teen years, it only got me a few pecks on the cheek. My wife certainly wasn't impressed with my guitar skills. But anyway, Mr. Lai married a mentally disabled or woman living with mental illness, a girl who'd been abandoned by her foster family.
abandoned under a tree, and just a 13-year-old girl at the time.
Yeah, really, a girl, 13. Wow.
Thankfully, he waited a while before getting started on having kids, but this couple, blind man and mentally challenged mother, would have 12 children.
12 children. One of them also had mental challenges.
Yeah, 12 kids, eh? Poor mother.
Yeah, and poor in both senses of the word. How do you feed, clothe, and take care of all these kids? Well, all of the family, kids included, made their living by begging.
Yeah, but it's not such a big family yet. The subject of our story today, Lai Dongjin, he was the second child after an older sister.
But let's use his shorter name. Jin is what people call Lai Dongjin. In Taiwan, it's very common to have a friendlier, shorter Taiwanese form, and usually there's an in front of it, so they called him Jin.
Okay, so Jin was born on March 20th, 1959, in a temple in Dongshi Township, Taichung County, in a temple building used for storing corpses. At that time, his father was about 41 years old.
It was a tough childhood on the streets. Because of the mother's mental condition, Jin's father often tied her with a rope or chain to prevent her from wandering off while he begged with the older children. Kind of tied up like a dog.
They lived like stray dogs too, a very nomadic existence. They slept under trees and temples and cemeteries. Jin grew up begging from his very first years. And all the time, the family's growing, new sisters and brothers, including a mentally disabled brother. Yeah, and when they were walking from place to place, the blind father might carry 2 babies on a shoulder pole, and the young Jin held the chains of his intellectually disabled mother and brother.
Wow, quite a sight.
Yeah, they were dirty, they were in rags, and the children with shaved heads to avoid lice.
So understandably, they stood out and would receive derision from neighborhood children. Kids can be very mean. Some people, usually women, would give them leftover food. And at religious activities, temple fairs, there were always some people who were generous of heart.
And if things got really desperate food-wise, there was the door-to-door approach. In his autobiography, Beggar Boy, Lai, or Jin as we're calling him, he recalls a typhoon as a 7-year-old. He decided to brave the storm to beg for food, and he knocked on doors, crying and kneeling while he begs, and finally one household, moved by the family's plight, invited him in and gave him dry clothes and provided 2 bowls of rice, covering them with a bowl on top for him to carry home.
A few people actually admonished his father for his lifestyle, for having the boy out begging. They said, your kid should go to school.
And this happened when the boy was 10 years old. The father returned to Wuri in Taichung, where an uncle lived. They searched for a place and they settled in a converted pigsty. Lai started attending Wuri Elementary School.
Predictably, at school, Lai was mocked as a beggar's child, but he soon proved himself. Within a few weeks, he was elected class leader by his classmates.
He excelled academically, consistently getting top grades and receiving awards. This was throughout his elementary school years. But it was not a complete break with his old ways. He kept begging. In fact, he lived by begging until he was 16 or 17.
And the family situation remained bad. Soon after starting school, Lai found his sister crying at home one day. His sister reassures him. She says, don't worry about me. Everything's okay. Just worry about your studies. The next day, his sister's gone. Jin later learned his sister had been sold to support the family and his education.
And not just sold to a family or sold to a man as an underage wife, but sold into a brothel.
So you can imagine the shock, the guilt, the anger that Jin felt. His initial reaction was that he wanted to quit school.
Yeah, his sister, only 13, and she ended up working in the brothel until she was 18, after which she was married off to a blind, one-armed beggar. They had some children, and to support them, she went back to the old business.
Yeah, okay, but that's in the future. Let's go back to Jin's school. So he's at school, a student by day, a beggar by night, begging with his blind father, waking up early in the morning to cook and wash clothes. This is an exhausting schedule, maybe 5 hours of sleep each night. And it must be said, his father was rather harsh, not by all accounts a very kind man. So Ajin considered running away several times. According to his memoir, Beggar Boy, when he was 13, he attempted to take his own life with a dull knife. And he also contemplated poisoning the entire family with rat poison. However, a promise to his elder sister stopped him because her last words to him were, "Take care of everyone."
Jin, even as a young child, he had to take care of his parents and younger siblings. After his sister left, he took on a lot more of the household responsibilities, cooking, cleaning, and as always, caring for his disabled mother and brother. But his dedication came to people's attention, earned him recognition as a model of filial piety in the local area.
So in Chinese culture, and that's of course seeped into Taiwanese culture, filial piety, Xiao, the same character in Zhongxiao East Road, Zhongxiao Road in Taipei, or basically every city in Taiwan, Xiao is highly valued. Of course, being filial and being nice to your parents is a universal human feeling. It's in the Ten Commandments, honor thy father and thy mother. But it's especially praised and cultivated among Taiwanese or Chinese.
Yeah. Eric, I'm sure you've heard of the 24 filial exemplars, that classic text of Confucian filial piety. Filial piety exemplars, examples, role models of treating one's parents well.
Yeah, you can see pictures of those examples in some temple artwork and also at the dragon and tiger pagodas at Lotus Lake in Kaohsiung. Some are rather dramatic. They're so extreme, they actually make you laugh. There's one where the filial son, being in a poor family unable to afford mosquito nets, he would sit near his parents' bed with his skin exposed and allow the mosquitoes to suck his blood so they wouldn't bother his parents.
Yep, and there's that one with the son lying on an ice-covered river. I forget why.
Yeah, there's one with a daughter-in-law nursing her husband's mother or something. One of these 24 stories involves a man who sold himself into servitude to pay for his dead father's funeral. But thankfully, a celestial maiden touched by the display comes down to earth, marries him, and completely changes his fortunes.
These stories are sometimes borderline crazy, right? I prefer the less extreme ones. There's one story that's memorably mundane. It's called He Picked Mulberries for His Mother.
He picked mulberries for his mother? Explain.
Okay, a young man's living with his mother. The father's died, and they're struggling to buy food. So they would gather wild mulberries to sustain themselves. One day, while out gathering mulberries, the young man encountered rebels. They asked, "Why do you separate the black and red mulberries and place them in different baskets?" He replied that the black ones, which tasted sweet, were for his mother, while the red ones, which tasted a little sour, were for himself. The rebels were impressed by his filial piety and rather than rob him, gave him some food.
Aw, nice. Kind of like separating M&Ms. That's doable.
Yeah, it's better than selling yourself to pay for a funeral, isn't it?
Yeah. I could do the mulberry thing. Definitely. Okay, back to our beggar boy, Lai Dongjin or Ajin. His story fits into a long tradition of suffering for one's family, one's parents. And this includes suffering for parents who seem or are undeserving. And as I said before, in this case, the father was rather undeserving, reportedly bad-tempered, and sometimes violent.
The beggar boy earned praise for his filial piety and for his dedication to and ability at school. Supportive teachers and others encouraged him to continue his education.
Yeah, but he was dirt poor. The family would steal food left outside for dogs. Here's an example of their poverty that kind of shocked me. He practiced riding in a long jump sand pit with a stick, as he didn't have money for a pen or a piece of paper or any stationery of any kind.
Yes. And he got by on very little sleep because, he's begging with his father often until midnight. And, his meals were less than ideal. In those days, they didn't have school lunches like today, provided by the school. Students or their parents brought lunch to school. Jin's food was so bad that he would sometimes be helped out by students and teachers, and memorably so at special times such as Dragon Boat Festival and Mid-Autumn Festival.
So he had a teacher, and she was especially kind. Her surname, Chen. One day, Jin's with his father begging at the entrance of the Fengyuan night market. The father gets taken away by the police, and the young man had to walk over 30 kilometers back to Wu.
Yeah, it's fun saying the r in there.
A little bit difficult, but fun, yes.
The next morning, this teacher, Chen Laoshi, she reassured him, saying, "Don't worry, focus on your classes. After school, I'll go with you to the police station and we'll get your dad released." And she said, "Don't worry about the money."
Don't worry about the money, so that would mean they would have had to pay a fine, yeah?
I guess so.
So that would imply that begging was illegal.
Yes, illegal, but tolerated to a large extent. And you'd need to catch the beggar in the act, taking the money, I guess. But, begging was not always illegal. If we go back to the Qing dynasty, we go back to 19th century Taiwan, it was legal and kind of organized. For this episode, I came across a copy of an inscription in stone from 1841 from Tainan City. It's issuing some rules for beggars following some recent trouble they had. They were not to do this and they could do that. You have it. You want to quote from it?
Yeah, okay, so number 1, beggars are not allowed to force others to donate money or rice against their will. They should only take what is offered by the stores. If they do not follow the rules, the leader of beggars is to be questioned.
Yeah, the leader of beggars. This was a formal position. Beggars had a beggar chief, a beggar chief for an area, elected by beggars, I think, and it was a job. You had to make sure the other beggars followed the rules.
And there were a lot of rules, so here's another one. Beggars are allowed to ask for 200 coins from the hosting family of a celebration for newborn children or on the festival of deity greeting. If there are no celebrations, beggars cannot ask for money. Here's another one. At formal weddings, beggars are allowed to ask for 200 coins from the hosting families. If it is less formal, only 100 coins may be asked. Number 4, if there's a funeral, no matter how long the funeral is, only 100 coins may be asked for. And finally, beggars are not allowed to beg inside the Taiwan prefecture in groups.
Well, having beggars turn up at your wedding or funeral, kind of an extortion. You just give them some money and send them on their way.
I guess it's considered like a good deed or something.
Yes. A good deed and you get merit. But back to our story of Jin. After graduating from elementary school, he proudly told his father, "Here are my certificates. Would you like to hold them, to feel them?" The father told his son that he had studied enough, that the family couldn't afford him doing any more schooling.
So Jin is stunned by his father's, "You're good, we have enough." That morning, the same morning he graduated, the principal praised him and encouraged him to keep up the good work in junior high. So Jin's thinking, am I going to be a beggar for the rest of my life?
Before the new semester, there's summer vacation. Jin worked hard, or begged hard, to earn money. He was upset, but, he had to get on with life. 2 months later, he gave all the money he had earned to his father, who then asked, "When is the junior high registration? Remember to pay the tuition fees."
So the father clearly had a change of heart or a change of fortune.
Yes. Now, I'm slightly suspicious of this. This is taken from the story itself. I think he would have been handing money over day by day. Not just a dramatic end of summer vacation, hand over the money.
And then there's the whole issue of bills and being able to know how much money is there if you're not able to see.
Yes. So we're relying on the account. So mostly true, but I wouldn't bet my life on everything. But anyway, In junior high school, Ajin did well in his studies, in sport, and in leadership.
So in his book, Beggar Boy, Ajin describes his success in athletics, winning first place in ball games and running competitions. He represented Taiwan County in provincial competitions, and he attributes his sports prowess to long years of begging, carrying siblings, and escaping from the police.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And, all these competitions, there's proof. He showed journalists all the awards, and there are records of this. But anyway, call me cynical about the running away from police as being the cause of his athletic ability. He's older than the other students. He's a year or two older. The age makes a difference.
Yes, it definitely does. Okay, so Ajin in junior high school, now he's in his second year, I think, but he still doesn't really get to concentrate on his studies.
His extracurricular activities are begging with his father at night. And at this time, his eldest sister, unable to bear the hardships of working in the brothel, she ran away and nobody knew where she was.
During these years, also, one sister died and two others were given away.
Yeah. Ajin, as the oldest boy and, now the oldest child in the family, he really felt the weight of all these things. And according to his story, several times he thought about ending things.
So as the high school entrance exams approached, Ajin faced a dilemma. He worried about his father, who's now roughly 60-something years old at this stage.
Yeah, getting close to 60, I think, yeah. Senior high school is, in a way, preparation for university. So 3 years at senior high and then 4 at university. That's 7 more years if he pursued higher education. If you're not going to university, especially in those days, you don't really need high school, right? Junior high is good enough to get a job.
Right. So Ajin decided on another route that still today some people also choose. He decided to attend a local vocational school. So he started working during the day and studying during the night.
In his final year at vocational school, he worked at the Zhongmei Fire Protection Equipment Company, gradually learning technical skills. And after graduating from the vocational school, he briefly served as a reserve soldier before returning to work at Zhongmei, where he steadily rose through the ranks.
At 26, Ajin married a junior high school classmate by the name of Lin Lixia.
The girl's parents must have been pretty open-minded.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Initially, I think they were against it. His background, family background, child beggar, beggar son, beggar family, not exactly what most local families are. Yeah. But they were eventually moved by his achievements and his determination, and they agreed to let their daughter marry Ajin.
After their marriage, the couple worked, but Ajin's father continued begging, perhaps out of habit. Tragically, his father died of throat cancer, and that left Ajin to handle the funeral expenses, and the wife covered them by selling her jewelry. But anyway, at the age of 30, Ajin is a married man, a father of 3, and he's become the manager, or at least production manager, I think, of the Zhongmei Fire Protection Company.
And in 1999, Ajin was named one of the 10 outstanding young persons in the country.
I think that came after he was also recognized as a model youth in his township and filial piety model in Taiwan County.
And his story was serialized in the newspaper, the China Times. Then he wrote an autobiography of his childhood. It was called Beggar Boy, Qǐgài jiǎnzǐ, published in May 2000. It was a national sensation.
Oh, yes, it was the stuff of publishing dreams. By October of that same year, the book had already been reprinted 14 times. It sold 500,000 copies in 4 months. Oh,
yeah. Among the high-profile readers who loved the book was President Chen Shui-bian, who, of course, had his own childhood poverty stories.
And Beggar Boy was a moving story, an inspiring example of an individual overcoming great adversity. There was a Chinese edition of the book for China, simplified characters. and also a Korean, a Japanese edition, Thai language edition too.
No English language edition. I wonder, John, our new publishing venture, Plum Rain Press. I wonder if people would be interested in an English translation of that book. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe. We'd need to do some fact checking. It's a great personal story, so even if 90% of it held up, it would be worth it.
And it does tie in with a long cultural legacy of begging. In an interview following the publication of the book, the author, Lai Dongjin or Ajin, was asked about whether religious faith had sustained him. His answer was that it was hope rather than religious faith. The belief that a beggar might, quote, rise head and shoulders above others, end quote. So that phrase, rise head and shoulders above others, is related to a Chinese 成语 or idiom, but I forget exactly how it goes. And he said on one occasion, when the whole family had been humiliated in the street, the father had made a dramatic outburst. The dad had said, even a beggar can one day become an emperor.
Even a beggar could one day become an emperor.
And those words had an effect on the beggar boy of our story.
Yeah, do you know the historical reference in that?
Okay, China had a lot of emperors. Give me a clue.
The Ming Dynasty.
Oh, okay. The founder of the Ming Dynasty.
Yep, the Hongwu Emperor reigning in the late 1300s. He was born to a family of impoverished tenant farmers like Ajin and like Chen Shui-bian, right? And this future emperor had numerous siblings, several of whom were given away by his parents. They didn't have enough food to support the family. When he was a teenager, famine brought death to everyone in his family except for him and one of his brothers. And for about 3 years, he led the life of a wandering beggar, but he would become the founder of the Ming Dynasty.
Quite the story. So thinking about this story for me just highlights, once again, the extreme poverty that Taiwan went through.
Yes, this is an atypical story. It's quite extreme, isn't it? But yes, it does highlight the degree of poverty. We couldn't see the same scenes today, could we?
No. In fact, it's shocking to see how few beggars there are on the streets of big cities in Taiwan. It's something that is commented on by visitors sometimes. Just, we don't have the same homelessness problems or...
Yeah, I mean, reading through some of these accounts from not that long ago, just the rather casual references to children being sold.
Yeah, there's that too. And we did an episode with Nancy Chen Baldwin about her experience. You can look that up. All right, well, we've run out of time. And once again, a big thank you for all the people who answered our call to action. And, the biggest thing you can do to help is telling a friend.
Or if you're drinking with a friend, grab their phone and secretly subscribe to Formosa Files podcast.
I like that too. All right, thanks for listening. I'm Eric Michael Smith.
I'm John Ross. Bye.